the album is so long and it's so derivative, to be honest, in some spots that it starts to bleed together at a
Mm.
certain point. Like
Kind of
once
like
you
their
get
faces on the album cover.
ah, I see what they did there. Huh.
Let me put you on game.
But to
Yeah.
keep it Atlanta, let's go ahead and get into our review of Culture 3 by the Migos. If you guys are
Migos.
hey, Migos are a Atlanta rap collective, often credited with the popularization and the inception of trap music as we know it.
Yeah.
This is their third studio album, following Culture 2 and Culture 1. And yeah, we're just going to talk about Culture 3 and what our thoughts are on it. How are you feeling about the album overall? Like, what are your overall impressions?
Um, it's business as usual. Over the last couple of years between Culture 2 and Culture 3, you saw a slew of independent projects and collab projects of all the members, individual members of the Migos. And so you got to see what they look like by themselves versus on their album. And that was kind of interesting and fascinating. You got some hits between that. But I think the culture has been waiting for them to come back and drop the last part of this culture series. Overall, the project for me was like decent. Again, like I said, back to business as usual. The typical trap stuff, the typical features. There were some shining spots on the album that I liked, like Pop Smoke's posthumous feature, as well as the song Avalanche and a couple others. But overall, it was just kind of okay to me. But what's been really fascinating for me to see is the feedback of the public versus the feedback of the critics. I've seen critics kind of lambast the album, saying that it's kind of dull. It's like really just a wash, rinse, repeat cycle of other of the previous culture projects, and it doesn't have the same pizzazz that the other culture projects had. What was kind of disappointing to me was to see the feature by Drake, which I felt was a little underwhelming and a bit Drake heavy and saturated and not as fun and as entertaining as, Walk It from Culture 2. And there
It was
just
kind of
weren't,
boring, to be honest.
yeah, yeah, they just weren't as many like bright spots.
Not the
You
album, but
know,
the song itself was just Drake's feature. Just didn't really do it for me.
yeah, like I remember in Culture 2, you got songs like Walk It, you got songs like Motorsport, you got songs like Stir Fry that just captured everybody's attention. And I just don't know if you have that same single dynamite single that can really just kind of take the culture forward, and so to speak. So that was kind of my overall impression. How about you?
Uh, I'm leaning more towards the critics on this one, to be honest. I I think it's kind of a slog, to be real. Like it's like it's an hour 15 minutes, I think, 19 tracks. Like I think a good 20 minutes of this album didn't necessarily need to happen. I think that there were so many songs on here that just seemed like they were just stuffed on there.
Mm,
So I liked some of the risks. We can talk about more of the risks that they took on the album in theory, but not necessarily in execution. I think that
mm,
there are a lot of songs that are pretty lackluster on here. And like you said, there are some highs. There are some songs that I really enjoy. There are some songs that give what the Migos offer at their best, but the album is so long and it's so derivative, to be honest, in some spots that it starts to bleed together at a
mm.
certain point. Like
Kind of
once
like
you
their
get
faces on the album cover.
I see what they did there. Huh. but yeah, once you get to the second half of the album, like the songs just kind of there's some spots that where the album changes up a little bit in terms of subject matter, but
Yeah.
yeah, it starts to kind of bleed together a little bit for me personally. I think it's better than Culture 2, but I don't think that it's better than Culture 1. I think Culture 1 is still a really good album, but I think it's overall for me better than Culture 2.
Mm,
But just to get into some specifics, I really enjoyed Avalanche. I thought it was a really creative use of a sample
okay, yeah.
with the Temptation sample, and I like what they did on that song. Uh, I think Straight In is cool. Um, it's a single, but I think it goes. Uh, Type Ish with Cardi is cool. I liked her verse and her energy.
Yeah.
Uh, Malibu was kind of a missed opportunity for me. I
Mm.
like the song, but if that's not the most the baby ass beat without the baby on it that I ever heard in my life.
Oh God.
But like that was cool. You can keep Birthday. I'm good on Birthday.
Yeah.
Uh
Yeah. Yeah.
Roadrunner was cool. Um Modern Day was cool. Vaccine seems a little tone deaf to me because the whole song is like we making money in quarantine, but it's like, man, there's so many people not making money in quarantine that it just seems kind of like it seems like that song probably shouldn't have happened. And also a rap song like using vaccine is just
Yeah.
not it's just not a good use of anyone's time.
Especially, especially in the wake of their Breakfast Club interview where they revealed that Offset and Takeoff have, bought into the conspiracies against the vaccine and have not taken it. And Quavo's the only one there, like, yeah, I took it. Wait, you can still get it? He was like, man, I got finesse.
that's
That just,
that's a conversation in and of itself.
yeah, man.
Uh, but I hadn't heard that. That's funny. But to talk about briefly why I thought that they took some chances. I think What You See with Justin Bieber, even though I don't really like the song, I
Mhm.
think it was different from the Migos to actually hear them express like a vulnerable emotion, which is like
Mm.
love, which is something that you don't really hear on their projects. It's mostly about like flossing for the most part.
Yeah.
Uh, Antisocial was cool. To hear the song again, like it's cool for me, I guess, but it was cool to hear them address depression and
Mhm.
hear Quavo talk about Pop Smoke and the people that he's lost in his life.
Yeah.
And
That was
but yeah,
powerful.
there's a stretch. Why not Mahomes, Handle My Business, Time for Me? Like I think all of those could have gone.
Mm.
to be honest. But yeah, there's a larger conversation I wanted to get into real quick. But what are some tracks that stood out to you? Oh, and Need It. I think Need It is probably the best song on the album for me. But
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, I think you kind of got a lot of the songs that I was kind of feeling, especially, talking about Antisocial and Avalanche. Um, but yeah, I don't have much else to add because it was kind of a slog. It was a very bloated album, and it kind of exemplifies some of the issues with this whole stream album situation where guys are just tacking on song after song instead of creating a nice, tight, cohesive project, which as a listener, we enjoy. We enjoyed Brockhampton's album for a reason. We enjoyed J. Cole's album for a reason. We felt the structure and it didn't overstay its welcome.
yeah.
But at this album at times you're just kind of like drifting through it. It's like, what, wait, were these two different songs or was this the same song? Was that a beat switch? No, that's it.
you,
So
you thought the album was like 3 or 4 sicko modes back to back.
like a light, like a light, like a light, like a but yeah, man. Yeah, so that's kind of my take. So what else are you thinking in terms of the broader implications of the album?
uh, I just have to wonder if the Migos have been market corrected
Mm,
because I think with Culture One, when they came out, it was new. It was fresh. It was something that we had never really seen the likes of before. We had heard trap music, but the way that they were rapping on it, like, and their rapping is still relatively the same. I think I would argue, I would even argue that it's better. I would even argue that they've improved lyrically. I think that they, while the subject matter isn't always necessarily something that you can dive deeply into, their
Mhm.
flows are always impeccable. They're always really great at what they do in terms of flowing over tracks and
Yeah.
creating like these vibes. Like the album, the whole album, if you're just riding around to it, I think it's great. I think that's why so many fans love it. But
Mm.
to get back to the market correction part, um, the Migos were trendsetters. So they set a trend that so many different artists followed. So many different artists came out after them and continued on and advanced their sound based on what the Migos were doing. Like
Yeah.
the album is called Culture for a reason, because they set a precedent for what trap music was going to sound like, and so many
Yeah.
artists followed that precedent. But now that the market is saturated with that kind of sound, when the Migos dropped this album, even though they're still innovators, it sounds like something we've heard before.
Yeah.
Because even though they're the ones that did it first, there's so many other people doing it that when they do it now, it sounds like everything else, despite the fact that they're doing what they originally came up with themselves. So I guess I wanted
Right.
to bring that up because I feel like that's part of the reason why critics and why people like us may not necessarily being enjoying the album, while other people that are lovers of trap music and lovers of, which I like trap music too, but people that are, that's 90% of what they listen to, they can see the differences in the album, they can see the intricacies, when for us it just kind of sounds like everything else.
Yeah. It's fascinating to hear what critics have to say and to just see the Twitterverse. Like I'm looking at the hashtag of Culture 3 and it's just love. They're getting nothing but love. The numbers are doing well. I think their first week numbers are pretty good. I saw 160K is what they're expected to do first week. And they're doing their press tour and they're just representing themselves in a big way. And they're here. The culture and the people love it. And I think that's the market that they're appealing to. And at the end of the day, if people are vibing to it, who are we to yuck their yum? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But yeah,
I
I
hate
guess
that
for our
phrase. But continue.
but yeah, ultimately, I think that they have really saturated the market with their own sound, and their own sound has been so trend-setting. It's like it almost. Can you believe that Culture One only came out 4 years ago?
That's crazy. Bad and Bougie was that. That's crazy.
Right? It's like it feels like we've been going through trap music for like decades now, but rather we've just had decades of trap music compressed into like a 4 or 5 year window.
Yeah, it's definitely oversaturated. It's too much of it.
Yeah. So it
But
remains to be seen what the next cultural wave will be and what Migos does with their style going forward, and if they have squeezed every last ounce of juice from this trap lemon, or if there's more that is on the horizon.
yeah. But shout out to them. It's no hate. It's just not personally. I enjoy the Migos as a group. It's just this album didn't necessarily do it for me. But
Yeah.
I'll always listen to what they have to offer because I think that they have something. They have something different that I do enjoy as a listener. So
Yeah.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see what, like you said, what they do going forward. But for me, Culture 3 is just something that like I probably won't be going back to,
Mm.
just because it just wasn't really hitting for me like that. But let's do four favorite tracks. I got Avalanche, Straightening, Roadrunner, and Need It.
Yeah. Same. I got Avalanche. Hold up, I'm trying to find my list. Antisocial, type ish with Cardi, and Time for Me.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. That'll do it for our Migos review. Make sure you hit us in our comments or in our email and let us know how you feel about the album. Be glad to correspond with you.